Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to my podcast. I've been away reflecting, just thinking about life. And I just feel like I wanted to do an episode where I spoke directly how I feel like my forgiveness journey was for anybody out there that's struggling with forgiveness. And I feel like, I would have appreciated a video like this when I was on my journey, or I probably wouldn't have, because when you're in a state of unforgiveness, you're very angry. And your heart is quite hard. So you're not as receptive to advice or chastisement or any form of feedback when it comes to forgiveness and growth. So I feel like I want to share my journey. And it might be a step-by-step type of video. I mean, this might be a series. I'm not sure. But I feel like I want to talk about it at length. So I'm thinking that right now I'm going to start with my willingness to forgive. So I feel like I'm going to start there. And then perhaps next week I might talk about something else, because I feel like it's so layered. But we'll see how it goes. I might end up going into it and just, weird how it goes. But I remember I think I was around, because I'm 35 now, and I think I was about 33 or 32. I think I was about 32. And I remember, it may have been later on, perhaps when I was 33. I remember having a conversation with somebody. They were sharing with me a story about, well, it's not a story. It was like they were gushing about the fact that they were going on a holiday with their mother. And I remember my response to that was, instead of it being kind of a positive response, like, oh my gosh, where are you going? Let me know, yada, yada, yada. I went into this 1 hour rant about just being negative about mothers and how so many people in the world are experiencing this experience with mothers and yada, 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 instead of just understanding that my experience is different to this one particular person's experience in that moment. And I remember leaving mortified. I was so mortified because I was like, this person's really excited about this trip that they're going with their mother. And she booked this trip for Mother's Day. It was like a Mother's Day thing. And she was like, I'm going to go on a Mother's Day trip with my mum. I've booked this trip. We're going to go, da, da, da. She was really excited. And I remember just going off on her. And this was actually a person that I had met. I had met her on Bumble BFF, which is kind of like an app for friends. And I had been on this hunt for a friend, just to connect with people. I had been struggling to connect with people for so long. And we had been speaking for a while. And she lived quite close to my loctician. She worked quite close to my loctician. So I thought, okay, on your lunch break, let's meet up for coffee. Because I was just about, I knew that my lock appointment was going to finish roughly around the time when her lunch break was. So we meet up And, this is the first time we physically meet. And I go off on this rant. And in the car, before driving off, I just remember just hitting my head on the steering wheel, thinking, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? This person is excited about her trip with her mother, and all you could do is be a wet blanket, be negative. And that's just, it was really hard on me. It was really hard on me. And I know that I ended up apologizing profusely to her, just saying, I'm really sorry, I'm mortified. I'm really happy for you kind of thing, enjoy your trip. But I'm grateful in that moment that I was so self-aware. But in that moment, my friend, she didn't say anything. She was kind of just listening, which in a way it's kind of like, oh, sorry that she had to go through that. And I vowed to myself in that moment that I was open to forgiveness. And I prayed, I said, God, help me forgive. And I was driving on the way home after that meeting. I was like, God, Jesus, help me forgive. Help me forgive. Soften my heart. I need to forgive. And the thing is, I always spoke quite extensively about people that would speak about, they'll say, men ain't this, men ain't that. And it's because obviously they had bad experiences with men. And because of that, they just assumed that all men were like that. They just assumed and put all men in one particular box because of the experience that they had. So they just assumed that they were all the same. And I used to always say, you can't just put everybody in the same box, right? You can't put, all men in the same box. You have some men that are of the belief that all women are materialistic or all women are gold diggers or whatever. And it is kind of the same ilk, it's the same thing, because they had some negative experiences that led them to that belief, right? And I feel like in that moment, I was like that community, but it was related to, mothers and stuff. So I prayed, and I was driving and praying. Like, I just needed Jesus to intervene, because I knew in that moment that it wasn't something I could do on my own. And then my husband and I decided that we were going to get therapy, individual therapy. So we both had similar reactions, I'd say, to certain things. And it was affecting other aspects of our life. So we knew that we had to do something about it. So we both decided that we were going to get individual therapy. And we thank God for provision, because we were able to get, really good quality therapists. And obviously this is something that isn't available to everybody. But we were definitely very grateful to God for providing the means for us to get the therapy that we needed. And we both got really good, well-qualified therapists, experienced there, and Christian. There was, a few things that we wanted, and we managed to get them. So I remember during that period of time, I was really I told myself that I forgive, but I knew that I didn't forgive, because I remember when I was speaking to my therapist, and my therapist was like, you don't forgive. You haven't forgiven. We need to speak about this more. And I knew that every time I was speaking to people, I'd speak and I'll get triggered. So I didn't I felt like every therapy session felt like it was opening up old wounds, because I just felt like I was talking about things that I had already spoken about so much with everybody in my triggered state. But I still had that willingness to forgive. I still wanted it so badly. There was a moment when I was trying to find ways to just focus on the positives, and focus on things that focus on all the stuff in front of me. And the thing is that society really encourages us to hold resentment. They say you should own it, you deserve it, you are entitled to this. And the thing is, we're not discounting. Nobody is discounting what you've been through. Nobody is saying or undermining it, or nobody is trying to belittle your feelings and things like that. No, we are entitled to our feelings, but I feel like forgiveness is for us. Forgiveness is for our healing. Forgiveness is for our growth. There's an aunt that I personally know that she is holding on to so much resentment that she's experienced cancer. And the thing is that nobody really wants to talk about this, and it's kind of such an outrageous thing to say. But a lot of books and a lot of psychologists will actually say that sometimes there are physical manifestations of unforgiveness. And the physical manifestation can be all of a sudden, your leg hurts, and, all of a sudden you always have a back pain, or certain things are physical manifestations of it. There was a moment when this aunt lost her memory because, she's several effects of this cancer. And when she lost her memory, the physical parts of the cancer weren't as prominent. She was now able to walk. She was now able to be way more mobile. It's because she had forgotten the things that had caused the unforgiveness. So we started to see her progress. And as soon as her memory got back and she remembered everything, there was now a sudden recession, and she's wheelchair bound because she remembers everything. So, a lot of people, will say, oh, it's spiritual because everything in this world is spiritual. Nigerians will be like, it's a spiritual attack, but really it's a matter of her letting go of the unforgiveness. Like, I was listening to Pastor Stephanie, and she was talking about a time when her and some other pastors were praying for people and trying to cast demons out. And they were doing everything, and they didn't understand why there was this one particular lady. They couldn't get these demons to leave this lady who had been possessed by several demons. And then Pastor Stephanie prayed, God, what's going on? They have all the faith. They believe that these demons can be delivered, and that this woman can be delivered from these demons. So what's going on? And God told Pastor Stephanie that the lady is harboring unforgiveness towards her father. So Pastor Stephanie had to speak to her about this, and then they prayed about it, and they spoke extensively to the point that I'm assuming that Pastor Stephanie cancelled her to an extent that made her, come to a place of forgiveness, or come to a place of understanding to just give the pain over to God. And when that happened, they were able to pray for this lady, and she was delivered from the demons. So I feel like holding on to it is so, it kind of just brings, holding on to unforgiveness brings along a whole lot of other issues and demons. So it's just interesting how that one conversation really triggered a need, in a way, for me to understand that I need to let go. And the thing is that, like, for example, there's like this lady on TikTok that she's like a master ranter, right? And she will rant for everything. And she comes like she's got quite a big audience because she's quite entertaining, and she's got quite a way with words. But you can tell that she's walking around with so much pain. You can tell that she's walking around with so much anger. And I think that when you are walking around with unforgiveness, it hardens you, right? And people, there's a lot of people that say, oh, I have no choice but to be strong. I have no choice but to be hard. The thing is that I remember when I turned 33 and I was like, I don't want to be hard. I don't want to be hard. I want to be dainty. I want to be soft. I don't want to be hard. I don't want to come across as this, hard lady, this hard woman that feels like she's got the world on her shoulders. I don't want that. And I feel like a lot of it was really all linked to the unforgiveness that I was holding on to. And I was willing and open. I was open to forgiveness. I was open to moving forward. And at the same time, I realized in that moment that the unforgiveness that I was holding on to and harboring was really getting in the way of actually building long-term friendships. Because my natural instincts always led back to thinking that somebody was going to do something to me. Somebody was going to be a backstabber. Or I just always assumed the negative. I wasn't the type of person that would be like, oh, innocent until proven guilty. It was always guilty until proven innocent with me. And I felt like that was getting in the way of me establishing genuine relationships and genuine friendships. And I also felt like the unforgiveness that I was holding on to was attracting the wrong type of people in my life, was attracting the wrong type of friendships. There was one particular friend that I had that she blamed her whole life's failures on me. And I allowed it and I accepted it in that moment. And I can only think that the reason why I thought it was appropriate to have such friendships is because I lacked forgiveness for myself, lacked love for myself. I feel like when we're on our forgiveness journey, we actually need to forgive ourselves for things as well. And there was a lot of things that I realized that I didn't forgive myself for. And I had nothing to do with this particular friend's life choices. It was all related to her choices, her family. But yet, because I, in that moment, was so self-loathing, I allowed myself and I allowed her to put everything on me. And the moment I decided that I was truly going to accept, that I was truly going to be free from all of that, I was able to comfortably walk away from such friendships, such relationships, because I was like, no, I deserve love. I deserve genuine friendship. I deserve grace. And also, I had nothing to do with these choices that you made. So a lot of the unforgiveness that I was walking around with for myself were linked to things I did as a child, linked to things that I did as a teenager. And it wasn't fair that I was so hard on myself for things that I did when I wasn't a fully formed, my brain wasn't even fully formed. I was still very much a child, a teenager, and there's certain decisions that you make that as a child, it's silly decisions. And I'm grateful that most of the decisions I made as a child didn't stay with me, as in like I didn't have to live with those consequences forever. but yet the lingering consequences were just me, were just my unnecessary unforgiveness towards myself for certain decisions. You know, when you kind of just think back at certain stories and you just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Like just for one example, I remember when I was 14 and I went to a party with one of my friends, and we used to call them shubs back in the day. And I was wearing a strapless top. And I'm not the type of person that should be wearing a strapless top for quite a few reasons. But I was wearing a strapless top. And the thing is that one of the things that I used to be hard on myself was that I was so pliable. I was so impressionable back and as a teen. So there were so many things that I did out of peer pressure, and I wasn't, because it took me such a long time, I'd say even in my 30s, to really come to grips with who I actually am and who God wants me to be. So I was always kind of just thinking, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this my scene? Is this my scene? Is this who I should be? So it was very easy for me to be encouraged to do certain things, and as easy for me to just be like, cool, because I wasn't sure of who I was anyway. So at 14, I went to a Shubs and I wore a strapless top, and I have this, and I remember back in the day when I'd look back and be like, oh, blessing. But I remember, dancing, and I was in a sandwich, it was called a sandwich, yeah. And it's basically two guys and me in the middle. And the friend that I was with, ends up coming to me, running to me, because my top had found its way down. So basically, in a nutshell, I'm in a party and I'm flashing the party. It was small, yeah. Yeah. So my friend obviously pulls up my top. I'm not completely unaware, none the wiser of what's happening. So there's certain instances like that where I look back and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I'm 14 years old. Like, here's the thing. My natural instincts when it comes to fashion or dressing or whatever, I'm very covered up. I like to wear baggy clothes, or I like to wear things that are, I tend to cover up. And I remember that day, the things that I brought over to stay when I was staying with my friend, most of the time it was always everything I packed, were things that were covered up. And she was like, oh, let's go shopping. You should wear this. So naturally, if somebody was to say that to me now, I'd be like, definitely not, But back then I was like, oh, okay. So I just looked back at certain things. There was quite a few things that I did that I look back at it and I'm just like, why didn't you say no? What was wrong with you? And things like that. And I was really hard on myself for decisions that I made when I was such an unsure teenager that was still growing, that still needed, I didn't have somebody to really have candid conversations about, I didn't have some people to talk to really. It was only when I got to sixth form, to be honest, that I had somewhat of a mentor. And that mentor was my head of year. And she really encouraged me and spoke to me. And I spoke to her on a daily basis about things, about my choices, about my life decisions. And she was really, she stood, she was very encouraging. But I didn't have anybody that believed in me like that, to, have a conversation with me about my life choices and all of that. So I would say that one of the first steps, and like I've told you, this is definitely going to be a series, I guess, but I would say the first step to being, my first step to forgiveness was definitely, I'd say, forgiving myself and being willing to forgive. So yeah, I really hope that you will stay for part 2, because I'm going to talk about, I think next week I'm going to probably talk about my process with therapy and what I learned about that and what I learned about myself during therapy and for like, my 2 years of therapy. So definitely would love to share that with you guys next week. But yeah, so I don't know if you got anything from this, but hopefully you did. And I just pray that whoever you are listening, whoever's listening, I pray that God I pray that you experience the joy that comes with the Lord, because in his presence there's a fullness of joy. And I pray that you experience the freedom of unforgiveness. I pray that you get delivered from unforgiveness. I pray that his presence will be so potent in your life that you will feel like you can give him all your pain, all your hurt, everything that you've experienced. And know that he's got you and he has plans to prosper you and plans for great things. So yeah, thank you for listening, guys. And I hope you will tune into the next one. But yeah, thank you for listening. Goodbye. I'm joking. Bye, guys. Thank you for listening. Bye.